Captain Jake Martinez sat in his command chair watching the stars drift past the main screen. The deep space research vessel Aurora's Dawn had been out here for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and checking for planets that might be useful to humanity someday. It was quiet work, the kind that made some crew members go crazy from boredom. But Jake liked it. Out here in the empty space between worlds, he could think clearly. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the long range." "Sensors!" called Lisa Park from her communications station. She was young, maybe 25, but she had the best ears for signals that Jake had ever seen. When Lisa said something was strange, it was worth paying attention to. Jake turned his chair toward her. "What kind of strange, Lisa?" "It's a signal, sir, but not like anything in our databases. The pattern is all wrong for human tech, and it's coming from way outside our mapped territory." She touched her earpiece and frowned. "Sir, I think it might be alien." The bridge went quiet. In all of humanity's expansion into space, they had found plenty of dead worlds and old ruins, but never a living alien civilization. The idea that someone else might be out there sending signals through the void made everyone stop what they were doing. "Put it on speakers," Jake said. What came through the ship's audio system sounded like music and mathematics mixed together. There were high tones and low ones, patterns that repeated and then changed, and underneath it all, something that sounded almost like crying. The signal lasted for 30 seconds, then started over again. "That's definitely not human," said Dr. Ben Wright, the ship's language expert. He was a thin man with gray hair who spent most of his time studying dead alien languages from old ruins. "But there are mathematical structures in it. See how certain patterns repeat every 12 beats? That's probably how they count." Amy Collins, the chief engineer, looked up from her station. "Captain, that signal is coming from about 40 light years away. Whatever is sending it has some serious power behind it." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Aliens were one thing, but aliens with technology powerful enough to send signals across 40 light years were something else entirely. "Can you tell what they're saying, Ben?" The doctor worked at his station for several minutes, running the signal through different analysis programs. When he looked up, his face was pale. "I can't translate the words yet, but the mathematical parts are clear enough. This is a distress signal, Captain. Someone is asking for help." Security Chief Ryan Blake stepped forward. He was a big man who always looked ready for a fight, but right now he looked worried. "Sir, we don't know anything about these aliens. They could be dangerous. Maybe this is a trap." "Maybe," Jake said, but he was listening to the signal again. Now that he knew what it was, he could hear the desperation in those strange tones. "Ben, how long has this been broadcasting?" "Based on the signal strength and the way it's repeated, I'd guess at least several weeks. Maybe longer." Jake closed his eyes and thought. 40 light years away, someone was asking for help, and they had been asking for weeks with no answer. Earth Command would tell him to ignore it, to continue his survey mission and report the signal when they got back to human space. That was the safe thing to do, the smart thing to do. But Jake had not joined the space service to be safe and smart. He had joined to explore, to find new things, and to help people when they needed it, even if those people were not human. "Lisa, can you track the source of that signal?" "Yes, sir. I've got coordinates. It's a star system with 7 planets about 40 light-years spinward of here. Amy, how long would it take us to get there?" The engineer checked her calculations. "About 6 days at maximum hyperspace speed, sir." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. He knew that Ryan was probably right about the danger. These aliens might be hostile, or this might be a trap, or they might already be dead by the time the Aurora's dawn arrived. But he also knew that if someone was out there asking for help, and he ignored them, he would never forgive himself. "Plot a course for that system," he said. "Maximum speed." "Sir," Ryan said, "Earth Command ordered us to complete the survey of this sector. If we leave now—" "Earth Command can court-martial me when we get back," Jake said. "Right now someone needs help, and we're the only ones close enough to give it." Amy was already working at her station, preparing the hyperspace drive. "I'll need about an hour to modify our systems for the longer jump, Captain." "Do it." "Ben, I want you to keep working on that signal. See if you can figure out what they're saying. Lisa, monitor all frequencies. If our aliens are in trouble, there might be other signals we need to know about." As the crew went to work, Jake stared at the main screen and listened to the alien distress call. The strange music-like tones seemed to fill the bridge, and he found himself thinking about what it meant. Somewhere out there, beings unlike anything humanity had ever encountered were asking the universe for help. They probably did not expect an answer. They were probably just hoping that someone, somewhere, would remember that they had existed. Well, Jake thought, today they were going to get an answer. "Captain," Ben called out after working for several more minutes, "I think I've figured out something important about this signal." "What is it?" "The mathematical patterns include what looks like star charts and population numbers. Big population. Numbers. We're not talking about a single ship in distress, sir. This is an entire civilization asking for help." Jake felt the weight of that settle on his shoulders. An entire alien civilization was in trouble, and the Aurora's dawn was just one small research ship with a crew of 43. What could they possibly do against whatever was threatening millions or billions of alien lives? But as he listened to the signal again, Jake knew it did not matter how small they were or how little they could do. When someone asked for help, you answered. That was what made you human. "Continue on course," he said quietly. "We're going to answer their call." President Helen Martinez stood before the assembled representatives of the new Galactic Council, her voice carrying across the great hall that had been rebuilt on Luna Base to accommodate hundreds of different species. The first human to hold. The office of Galactic President was a former diplomat who had spent decades preparing for this moment. 1 year had passed since the decisive battle at Rigel, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The old system of competing empires and constant conflict had been replaced by a unified government based on cooperation and mutual protection. "Fellow citizens of the galaxy," President Martinez began, her words translated into over 200 languages simultaneously. "Today marks the first anniversary of galactic unification under human leadership. In this past year, we have achieved peace, prosperity, and progress that our ancestors could never have imagined." Ambassador Kevin Lee sat in the front row of the assembly, representing Earth's interests in the new galactic government. The former military officer had been chosen for his diplomatic skills and deep understanding of alien psychology. His calm demeanor and genuine respect for other species had made him popular among representatives from dozens of worlds. Behind him, Ambassador Veltan of the Crystalline Consortium nodded in agreement. The diamond-hard alien had become one of humanity's strongest supporters after witnessing the benefits of human leadership firsthand. Dr. Nancy Brown approached the podium to present her annual report on interspecies cooperation. The human scientist had spent the past year working with researchers from across the galaxy to share medical and technological advances that had improved life for billions of beings. Madam President, I am pleased to report that human medical technology has eliminated 17 diseases that have plagued galactic civilization for millennia, Dr. Brown announced. Our life extension treatments have increased average lifespans by 30% across all participating species. A murmur of appreciation ran through the assembly as representatives from dozens of worlds acknowledged the improvements their people had experienced under human guidance. What had begun as military conquest had evolved into genuine partnership and mutual benefit. Former Council Prime Thane, now serving as Ambassador for Galactic Heritage Preservation, rose to address the assembly. The aging leader had initially opposed human expansion, but had become one of their most vocal supporters after seeing the results of human leadership. President Martinez, 1 year ago my people feared that human dominance would mean the end of our cultural independence, Thane said, his voice carrying the weight of his years in galactic politics. Instead, we have discovered that humanity values diversity and works to preserve the unique contributions of every species. President Martinez smiled as she responded. Ambassador Thane, humanity learned long ago that strength comes from unity, not uniformity. Every species in this galaxy has knowledge and capabilities that benefit all of us when shared freely. In the Luna-based medical research facility, Dr. Brown's team was working alongside alien scientists to develop new treatments for conditions that affected multiple species. The collaboration had produced breakthroughs that neither humans nor aliens could have achieved alone. Dr. Zix Ara, a hegemony biochemist whose people had once been humanity's enemies, looked up from her research station with excitement. Dr. Brown, the neural interface technology you developed is compatible with Corvani brain structure. We could eliminate their chronic pain syndrome within 6 months. Dr. Brown nodded enthusiastically. Excellent work. Have you coordinated with the Corvani medical teams on implementation protocols? The sight of former enemies working together to heal and improve life would have been impossible under the old galactic order. Human leadership had created an environment where cooperation replaced competition and knowledge was shared rather than hoarded. Ambassador Lee was meeting with representatives from the recently contacted Spiral Arm Coalition, a group of 12 species that had just made contact with galactic civilization. Under the old system, first contact with new species often resulted in exploitation or conflict. Ambassador Lee, our species are concerned about maintaining our independence while joining the galactic community, said Speaker Rethon, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid whose people controlled several star systems on the galaxy's edge. Speaker, humanity's policy toward new species is based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation, Lee explained. We offer protection, technology sharing, and trade opportunities, but we never force participation. You and your people are free to choose your level of involvement. The Spiral Arm representative relaxed visibly. Stories of human benevolence had spread throughout unexplored space, but seeing it firsthand was reassuring. Under human leadership, new species were welcomed as partners rather than conquered as subjects. President Martinez was reviewing reports from throughout human space when Admiral Morrison arrived for his monthly briefing. The veteran commander now served as Secretary of Galactic Defense, coordinating the protection of over 3,000 inhabited systems. Madam President, I'm pleased to report that piracy and illegal warfare have decreased by 95%. Since the establishment of the new galactic order, Morrison said, placing a data pad on her desk. Human patrol fleets are maintaining peace in every sector. Any resistance from former Imperial forces? Martinez asked. Minimal. Most alien military leaders have accepted positions in the new unified defense force. Those few who continue to cause trouble are dealt with quickly and efficiently. The transformation of galactic military forces had been one of humanity's greatest achievements. Instead of multiple competing fleets constantly threatening each other, the galaxy now had a single, unified defense force dedicated to protecting all member species. Dr. Brown was presenting her latest research to a joint session of the Galactic Science Council when an alert came through from the Outer Rim territories. A massive alien fleet had been detected approaching from outside the galaxy, representing a species that no one had ever encountered. "President Martinez, this is Admiral Morrison," came the urgent communication. "We have detected approximately 2,000 alien vessels of unknown design approaching from the galactic edge. Their technology appears to be significantly advanced." President Martinez immediately convened an emergency session of the Defense Council, bringing together military leaders from across human space. The prospect of facing an external threat would test the unity that humanity had worked so hard to build. "Admiral, what's our assessment of the alien fleet's capabilities?" Martinez asked. "Madam President, their ships are larger than anything in our databases, and their energy signatures suggest power levels that exceed even our most advanced dreadnoughts," Morrison replied. "However, their approach has been slow and deliberate, suggesting they may not be immediately hostile. Ambassador Lee volunteered to lead the first contact mission, taking a small diplomatic fleet to meet the approaching aliens. His years of experience with dozens of different species had taught him to recognize the difference between aggression and caution. The meeting took place in empty space between the galactic edge and the first human colonies. Lee's ship approached the alien flagship slowly, broadcasting messages of peaceful intent in every known language. "Unknown vessels, this is Ambassador Kevin Lee of the United Earth Space Navy and the New Galactic Council," Lee transmitted. "We welcome you to our galaxy and offer peaceful contact and trade." The alien response came in a language that the translation computers had never encountered, but the tone was clearly non-threatening. After several hours of patient communication, basic translation protocols were established. "Ambassador Lee, we are the guardians of the void, protectors of galactic civilizations," came the translated message. "We have observed your species rise to power and wish to evaluate your worthiness to join the greater community." Lee felt a chill as he realized the implications. These aliens represented a civilization that spanned multiple galaxies and had been watching humanity's development. The test they represented would determine whether the galaxy would be accepted into a larger community or face isolation. "Guardians, humanity, and our allied species welcome evaluation. We believe our commitment to peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity demonstrates our readiness for greater responsibilities." The evaluation process took several weeks, during which Guardian observers visited every major system in human space. They studied human technology, government, and social structures with scientific precision. Dr. Brown worked closely with Guardian scientists to demonstrate human medical advances and research methodologies. The aliens were particularly impressed by humanity's ability to adapt technologies from multiple species and improve upon them. President Martinez met personally with the Guardian Council, a group of beings whose technology was so advanced that they appeared as patterns of pure thought. The discussion covered humanity's approach to leadership, conflict resolution, and long-term planning. "President Martinez, your species has achieved something remarkable," the lead Guardian communicated through telepathic interfaces. In less, Vextar had been mining asteroids in the Kepler 442 system for over 30 cycles, and nothing interesting had ever happened there. The rocky chunks of metal and ice floating through space were easy targets, and his crew of 12 Zephyrians could strip an asteroid clean in 2 days. Their purple skin gleamed under the artificial lights of their mining vessel as they worked their shifts, never expecting anything more exciting than finding a particularly rich vein of rare metals. The system sat on the edge of known space, far from the busy trade routes where the real action happened. Most galactic citizens avoided this sector because it was close to that primitive world called Earth. Everyone knew about Earth from the old survey reports. A blue and green planet full of violent creatures who had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. The Galactic Council had classified them as a pre-contact species decades ago and forbidden any interference with their development. Vextar was checking the morning sensor readings when something made him freeze. His scanning equipment was picking up energy signatures that should not exist in empty space. The readings showed massive power sources moving through the system, but his visual sensors showed nothing but stars and darkness. He called his sensor operator over to check the equipment. "Kixana, run a full diagnostic on the long-range scanners," Vextar ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had survived 3 decades in the dangerous work of deep space mining. Kixana's 4 arms moved quickly over the control panels, her large black eyes focused on the readouts. After several minutes of testing, she looked up with confusion written across her scaled features. "Sir, the scanners are working perfectly, but these readings make no sense. The energy signatures are moving in formation, like a fleet of ships, but they are massive. Each one shows power levels that would require a ship the size of a moon." Vextar felt his throat sacs tighten with worry. In all his years of mining, he had learned to trust his equipment and his instincts. Both were telling him that something very large and very powerful was moving through their system. He activated the emergency communication array and sent a priority message to the Galactic Council on Century Prime. 3,000 light-years away, Council Prime Thane received the message during his morning briefing. The tall, gray-skinned leader of the galactic government read through Vextar's report twice before calling his military advisors into the chamber. The great hall buzzed with quiet conversation as representatives from dozens of species discussed the morning's agenda items. "Admirals, we have received a disturbing report from the Kepler 4142 system," Thane announced, his deep voice carrying easily through the chamber. "A mining operation reports detecting massive energy signatures near the human homeworld of Earth." Admiral Korthak, the military representative from the Hegemony Empire, laughed so hard that his tentacles shook. "Council Prime, with respect, the humans are barely capable of reaching their own moon. Their most advanced vessels are chemical rockets that would take centuries to reach another star. Whatever those miners detected, it was not human technology." Several other military leaders nodded in agreement. The humans were a joke among the galactic powers. Their planet had been surveyed 40 years ago by a Zephyrian science ship, and the report was clear. The humans were aggressive, territorial, and completely isolated on their single world. They had nuclear weapons, which was concerning, but no space technology worth mentioning. The survey team had observed their crude attempts at space travel and concluded that humans would not be ready for galactic contact for at least another 200 years. But Thane had not survived 50 years in galactic politics by ignoring unusual reports. He ordered a monitoring station to focus their long-range sensors on the Kepler 442 system and maintain constant surveillance. If something was happening near Earth, the Council needed to know about it. Back in the mining system, Vextar and his crew continued their work, but everyone remained nervous. The mysterious energy signatures had not disappeared. Instead, They seemed to be getting stronger and moving closer to the inner planets where the mining operation was located. Vextar decided to move his ship closer to the asteroid belt, hoping that the large chunks of rock and metal might provide some protection if whatever was out there proved hostile. On the third day after the first detection, space itself seemed to tear open near the edge of the system. A massive shape emerged from what the humans called faster-than-light travel, though no one in the galaxy believed humans possessed such technology. The ship that appeared was like nothing in any galactic database. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest hegemony battleship, and its hull was a dark gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Vextar's crew stared at their screens in shock as more ships appeared. 5, then 10, then 20 massive vessels dropped out of hyperspace and arranged themselves in a perfect formation. Their design was completely alien to galactic standards, with smooth curves that suggested both beauty and deadly purpose. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching as his fleet completed their jump into the system. The human commander was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair that spoke of years spent in the depths of space. His uniform was simple and practical, bearing the insignia of the United Earth Space Navy. Behind him, his crew of 300 worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring systems and preparing for whatever they might encounter. "Dr. Carter, are you reading any signs of intelligent life in the system?" Morrison asked, turning to the woman standing at the science station. Dr. Lisa Carter was one of Earth's leading experts on alien biology, though like most humans, she had never actually seen a living alien. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her blue eyes were focused on the sensor readouts. "Yes, Admiral. I'm detecting one vessel approximately 200,000 kilometers from our position. The ship appears to be a mining vessel based on its energy signature and the presence of refined metals in its cargo hold." Morrison nodded and walked to the communications station. For decades, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Earth scientists and military leaders had spent generations developing the technology and strategies that would be needed when humans finally made contact with galactic civilization. Today was the day that preparation would be tested. "Open a channel to the alien vessel," Morrison ordered. The communication officer, a young man named Pete Collins, worked quickly to establish contact. Within moments, a translation program that had been developed from intercepted galactic communications began converting human speech into the standard galactic trade language. Vextar nearly fell from his command chair when his communication system activated and a voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Attention, mining vessel. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Navy. This system is now under human protection. You and your crew are not in danger, but you will need to leave this area within 48 hours. The Zephyrian mining commander's voice shook as he replied. "Unknown vessel. You claim to represent the humans of Earth. This is impossible. Humans do not possess space travel technology." Morrison's voice remained calm and professional as he responded. "I understand your confusion. Humanity has chosen to remain isolated until now, but circumstances have changed. You have 48 hours to complete your mining operations and depart. Any vessels that remain after that time will be escorted from the system." Vextar looked at his crew, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. The massive ships surrounding them represented technology that should not exist. The humans were supposed to be primitive, barely able to leave their own atmosphere. Yet here they were, commanding vessels that dwarfed anything the galactic powers could build. "Sir," Kixana whispered, "should we contact the Council?" Vextar nodded slowly. never taking his eyes off the display showing the human fleet. The galaxy was about to learn that everything they believed about Earth and its inhabitants was completely wrong. High Admiral Zix received the emergency report while dining in his private quarters aboard the hegemony flagship Eternal Conquest. The massive alien commander stood nearly 8 feet tall, with thick armor plating that had evolved over millions of years on his harsh homeworld. His species, the Corvani, had dominated their sector of the galaxy for over 1,000 years through superior military might and aggressive expansion. The report from Vextar's mining crew seemed like the ravings of frightened civilians. Humans possessing advanced starships was as believable as insects learning to write poetry. Zix had read the intelligence files on Earth many times. The planet was home to a species of primitive mammals who had only recently developed nuclear weapons and basic rocket technology. Their most advanced spacecraft could barely reach their own moon. "Bring me Admiral Dekthar," Zix commanded his aide, a smaller Corvani who immediately scurried from the room. Within minutes, Dekthar entered the Admiral's quarters and saluted with the traditional crossing of all 4 arms. He was younger than Zix, but had proven himself in dozens of battles against rebellious colony worlds and space pirates. "Dekthar, prepare Battle Group 7 for immediate deployment to the Kepler 442 system," Zix ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been disobeyed. "Some mining crew claims that humans have built a fleet of warships. We will investigate this nonsense and remind whoever is really behind this that the hegemony does not tolerate deception." Dekthar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Sir, how many ships should I prepare? Surely a dozen cruisers will be more than sufficient to deal with whatever primitive vessels the humans might have cobbled together." Zix considered this for a moment. The hegemony's standard response to any challenge was overwhelming force. Better to arrive with too many ships than too few and risk embarrassment. "Take 50 vessels, battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. If the humans have somehow acquired advanced technology from another species, we need to be prepared for anything." 3 days later, Battle Group 7 dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Dekthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Victory, and immediately ordered long-range sensors to scan for enemy vessels. What the sensors detected made his blood run cold. "Admiral," his sensor operator reported, "I am detecting multiple large vessels throughout the system. They appear to be arranged in defensive formations around the inner planets." "How many ships?" Dekthar demanded. "Sir, I count at least 150 vessels, each showing massive energy signatures. They are significantly larger than our battleships." Dekthar felt his confidence drain away like water through a broken hull. 50 hegemony ships had seemed like overkill when dealing with primitive humans. Now it appeared they were outnumbered, 3-to-1 by vessels of unknown capability. Captain Ben Torres watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as the alien fleet appeared on his screens. The human commander was younger than Admiral Morrison, with dark hair and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. He had been born on Luna Base and spent his entire life preparing for the day when humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy. "Communications. Open a channel to the alien fleet," Torres ordered. Lieutenant Amy Foster, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from her station. The red-haired woman had graduated at the top of her class from the Earth Space Naval Academy and specialized in alien military tactics. "Captain, should I prepare weapon systems?" "Not yet, Lieutenant. Let's see if we can resolve this peacefully." The communication system crackled to life as the translation computers established contact with the hegemony fleet. Torres spoke clearly and calmly. "Hegemony vessels, this is Captain Ben Torres of the United Earth Space Navy. You have entered human space without permission. State your intentions." Dekthar's voice boomed through the communication system, though the translation made it sound flat and emotionless. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. The hegemony does not recognize any human claims to territory in this system." Torres sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be more reasonable, but Earth's intelligence services had warned that the hegemony species was particularly aggressive. "Hegemony Commander, I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw from this system peacefully. You are outnumbered and outgunned. There is no need for violence." Dekthar's response was to order his fleet to attack positions. 50 hegemony warships, spread out in a battle formation that had proven successful in hundreds of previous engagements. Their plasma cannons and missile systems locked onto the nearest human vessels. "Unknown aliens, you have 10 seconds to surrender or we will open fire," Dekthar announced. Torres looked around his bridge at the calm, professional faces of his crew. Every person on board had trained for this moment their entire lives. "All ships, this is Torres. The aliens have chosen violence. Execute Battle Plan Alpha." Space around the hegemony fleet suddenly filled with new contacts as human ships that had been invisible appeared on sensors. Advanced stealth technology that humanity had spent decades perfecting allowed entire fleets to remain hidden until they chose to reveal themselves. What had appeared to be 150 human ships suddenly became over 300. Lieutenant Foster's fingers danced across her tactical controls as she coordinated the human response. "Captain, all ships report ready. We have complete tactical superiority. Fire when ready, Lieutenant." The human fleet opened fire with weapons that no alien species had ever encountered. Particle beams that could punch through the strongest armor, missile systems that never missed their targets, and energy weapons that seemed to bend space itself struck the hegemony ships with devastating precision. Dekthar watched in horror as 3 of his battleships simply disappeared under the human assault. Their shields, which had protected them in countless battles, lasted less than 5 seconds against human weapons. The return fire from his fleet struck the human vessels, but seemed to have no effect at all. "Damage report!" Dekthar screamed at his tactical officer. "Sir, we have lost 12 ships in the first exchange. Our weapons appear to be completely ineffective against human defenses. Their armor and shield technology is beyond anything in our databases." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. The human fleet systematically dismantled the hegemony attack force with surgical precision. They targeted weapons and engines, leaving the alien ships helpless but intact. Not a single human vessel showed any damage. Captain Torres opened communications again. "Hegemony Commander, your fleet is defeated. Prepare to surrender." Dekthar looked around his bridge at the flashing warning lights and smoke-filled air. Half his fleet was either destroyed or disabled, and the humans had accomplished this without losing a single ship. His species had ruled their sector through strength, but they had just encountered a force that made them look like children playing with toys. "We surrender," Dekthar said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. Torres nodded to his communications officer. "Very good. You will remain in this position while we make arrangements for your departure. Any vessel that attempts to leave without permission will be destroyed." Aboard the UES Guardian, Lieutenant Amy Foster was already analyzing the battle data. The alien weapons were decades behind human technology, and their tactics were crude and predictable. She began preparing her report for Earth Command, knowing that this engagement would be studied in military academies for generations. The news of the battle spread through galactic communication networks like wildfire. Within hours, every major government in known space had received reports of the hegemony's crushing defeat. The humans, who had been dismissed as primitive savages, had just humiliated the galaxy's most powerful military force. On Century Prime, Council Prime Thane called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 50 species gathered in the Great Hall, their voices creating a din of worried conversation. The careful balance of power that had maintained peace for centuries was suddenly in question. "The evidence is clear," Thane announced to the assembled representatives. "The humans possess military technology that exceeds anything in our combined fleets. We must reassess our entire understanding of this species and their capabilities." Ambassador Velton of the Crystalline Consortium raised one of her diamond-hard appendages. "Council Prime, perhaps we should consider opening diplomatic relations with these humans. If their technology is as advanced as these reports suggest, they could be valuable allies." Admiral Korthak of the Hegemony military stood and spoke with barely controlled rage. "The humans have attacked a peaceful hegemony, fleet without provocation. This is an act of war that cannot be ignored." Thane's response was calm but firm. "Admiral, according to the battle reports, your fleet entered human space and threatened to attack first. The humans showed considerable restraint by disabling your ships rather than destroying them completely. Captain Torres received new orders from Earth Command while his fleet maintained position around the disabled hegemony vessels." Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the secure communication channel. General Sam Rodriguez stood in the deepest level of Cheyenne Mountain, 3 miles beneath the surface of Earth. The massive underground complex housed the headquarters of Human Strategic Command, an organization that most of Earth's population never knew existed. The general's weathered face showed the strain of 40 years spent preparing for the day when humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy. Around him, thousands of technicians and analysts worked at computer stations that processed information from across known space. Giant screens displayed star charts showing the positions of human assets throughout the galaxy, assets that alien governments were only now beginning to discover. Dr. Kate Williams approached the general's command station, carrying a datapad filled with intelligence reports. The chief scientist of the Terra Defense Research Division had spent her entire career developing the technologies that made human dominance possible. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her lab coat bore the stains of decades spent in research facilities. "General, we're receiving reports from our observation posts throughout the galaxy," Dr. Williams said, handing him the datapad. "Every major government is trying to understand how we achieved technological superiority so quickly." Rodriguez smiled grimly as he read through the reports. "They still don't understand, do they? They think we developed all this technology in the last few years." 3 levels below them, in a specially secured interrogation facility, a Zephyrian intelligence officer named Yilnoth sat across from a human interrogator. The alien had been captured during a reconnaissance mission to the Sol system 2 years earlier, though his government believed he had died in a transport accident. Matt Johnson, the lead engineer who had designed humanity's stealth technology, entered the interrogation room carrying a cup of coffee and a friendly smile. The middle-aged man looked more like a college professor than someone who had revolutionized space warfare. "Good morning, Yilnoth. I hope you slept well," Johnson said, settling into his chair. The Zephyrian's purple skin had faded to a pale lavender during his time in captivity, and his large black eyes showed the strain of months spent trying to understand how humans had achieved the impossible. "Your people continue to defy every law of technological development. It should have taken your species centuries to develop faster than light travel, yet you possess fleets that dwarf anything in the galaxy." Johnson sipped his coffee and opened a folder filled with historical documents. "That's because you're operating under false assumptions, my friend. You believe we're a young species that recently developed space technology, but the truth is quite different." The human engineer spread several photographs across the table, showing what appeared to be ancient human ruins on distant worlds. Yilnoth leaned forward, his eyes widening as he examined the images. "These structures show human architectural styles, but according to your databases, humans have never left the Sol system," Johnson explained. "The truth is that humanity has been exploring the galaxy for over 200 years. We simply chose to remain hidden." Yilnoth's voice shook as he spoke. "Impossible. Our surveys of Earth showed a primitive civilization barely capable of reaching their own moon." "Those surveys saw exactly what we wanted them to see," Johnson replied. "Did you really think a species capable of surviving Earth's harsh environment would be as simple as your report suggested?" In another part of the facility, Dr. Williams was briefing a group of newly captured alien prisoners about humanity's real history. The prisoners included representatives from 5 different species, all of whom had been taken during recent reconnaissance missions into human space. "Your governments classified Earth as a death world when they first discovered it 300 years ago," Dr. Williams explained, using a holographic display to show images of Earth's surface. "Violent storms, extreme temperature variations, massive predators, and constant geological activity. Most species would never attempt to colonize such a hostile environment." A Corvani military officer named Tekvar raised one of his 4 arms. "Our biologists concluded that any species evolving on such a world would be too aggressive and violent to achieve spaceflight. Intelligent species require peaceful environments to develop advanced technology." Dr. Williams laughed, a sound that sent chills through the alien prisoners. "That's where you made your biggest mistake. Earth's hostile environment didn't make us too violent for space travel. It made us stronger, smarter, and more adaptable than any species in the galaxy. While your people evolved on garden worlds with stable climates, humans learned to survive. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts." She touched a control, and the display showed human cities built into mountainsides and underground complexes that stretched for hundreds of miles. "When humanity first achieved spaceflight, we didn't announce ourselves to the galaxy like most species do. Instead, we studied you. We watched, we learned, and we prepared." Back in General Rodriguez's command center, intelligence reports continued to pour in from human observers throughout the galaxy. These observers had been posing as members of various alien species for decades, using advanced genetic modification and surgical techniques to blend in perfectly with galactic society. Agent Lisa Park had spent 15 years living among the crystalline consortium, her appearance altered to match their diamond-hard biology. Her reports had provided Earth with detailed information about galactic military capabilities and political structures. Now she was transmitting her final intelligence before revealing her true identity to alien authorities. "Command, this is Agent Park reporting from Consortium Central. The alien governments are in complete panic. They're realizing that their merchant ships, diplomatic corps, and even military units have been infiltrated by human agents for decades." Rodriguez activated his communication system to address the agent. Excellent work, Lisa. You and the other deep cover operatives have provided intelligence that will ensure human dominance for generations. Begin extraction procedures immediately. Dr. Williams approached the general's station with another report. Sam, our archaeological teams are reporting success throughout the galaxy. We've confirmed human settlements on over 300 worlds, some dating back nearly 2 centuries. The general nodded with satisfaction. Humanity's expansion into the galaxy had been carefully planned and executed with military precision. While alien governments believed humans were confined to Earth, human colonists had been establishing hidden bases and research facilities on worlds throughout known space. In the interrogation room, Matt Johnson was explaining humanity's technological development to the increasingly disturbed Yilnoth. Your species developed technology in a linear fashion, building on discoveries made by previous generations. Humans took a different approach. We analyzed every piece of alien technology we could acquire and reverse-engineered improvements. Johnson activated a holographic display showing the evolution of human starship design. Our first faster-than-light vessel was based on a crashed hegemony scout ship we recovered in 2157. Within 20 years, we had improved their design by 300%. Within 50 years, our ships were faster and more powerful than anything in their fleet. Yilnoth stared at the display in horror. You're saying that humanity has been stealing and improving alien technology for 2 centuries? Not stealing, Johnson corrected. Salvaging, purchasing, and reverse engineering. We established trade relationships with dozens of species, always careful to appear less advanced than we actually were. Every piece of technology we acquired was studied, improved, and incorporated into our own designs. The human engineer opened another folder containing technical specifications. Earth's harsh environment taught us to be efficient and resourceful. We don't waste materials or energy like most galactic species do. Our ships are smaller, faster, and more powerful because we learned to build them better. General Rodriguez received a priority communication from Admiral Morrison aboard the UES Liberty. The Admiral's face appeared on the secure channel, his expression serious but pleased. General, our reconnaissance fleets report that alien governments are finally discovering the true extent of human expansion. They're finding our hidden bases and research stations throughout the galaxy. How are they reacting to the revelations? Rodriguez asked. Panic, mostly. The hegemony has recalled all their fleets to defend their home systems. The consortium is demanding emergency sessions of the Galactic Council. The Zephyrian Empire is trying to establish diplomatic contact through intermediaries. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in weeks. Perfect. Fear will make them more reasonable when we begin formal negotiations. Dr. Williams joined the conversation, her voice filled with scientific excitement. Admiral, our xenobiology teams are ready to share medical advances with any species that agrees to peaceful relations. Human research into alien biology could extend lifespans and cure diseases that have plagued the galaxy for millennia. In the interrogation facility, Yilnoth was learning the final truth about humanity's preparation for galactic contact. Johnson showed him images of massive underground shipyards built into asteroids throughout the Sol.